G'day guys and welcome to ReDriven. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 or 2 or 3 of this series, hit pause now and go and watch part 1 just up there because it'll explain all of the rules. For the rest of us that are up to speed, welcome to part 4. And hey, listen, thank you so much for all of your recommendations and suggestions for this list, but keep them coming because we still have one more part to go. Anyway, look, it's pretty much the same rules as last time. We've tried to keep these cars to under 150,000 Aussie dollars because we feel that's pretty much where affordability ends, even for those earning serious money. Just because these cars are iconic, it doesn't necessarily mean they're good. And we've also tried to keep these cars as internationally and as readily available as possible. And yes, this list is in numerical order, but ignore that. All of these cars are equally iconic. So kicking things off and proving that being iconic doesn't equate to actually being any good, it's the XJ Jeep Cherokee. Okay, look, that's being far too harsh, as there are literally several Cherokee owners out there around the world that have never had an issue with their Jeep. But just because Jeep as a brand has quite the checkered reputation for reliability, there's no doubt that the XJ Cherokee is iconic. Jeep initially marketed the XJ as a sports wagon, and it sparked the trend of the general public switching from traditional station wagons into something tall and rugged. The XJ Cherokee was a revelation, being one of the first modern vehicles that fused all-terrain capability, practicality, and decent on-road manners, and is widely regarded as the precursor to the SUV before the term was even really used. While the XJ Cherokee retained its off-road prowess, unlike the majority of other 4x4s, it rode on a unibody chassis, and it was smaller than the full-size Cherokee that it replaced. The importance of the XJ is all too often overlooked, but not only was it superior off-road than the previous Cherokee, thanks to that unibody platform, it was far lighter and lower, yet it had better ground clearance. It was even shorter and narrower, yet only slightly smaller inside thanks to brilliant internal design and packaging. While still fully capable of rock climbing serious terrain and mud wrestling the toughest of tracks, the Cherokee was a major trendsetter thanks to this smaller size and less cumbersome dynamics than what a traditional full-sized 4x4 could offer. And it instantly became a hit with consumers worldwide, selling nearly 3 million units over its 17-year lifespan. While the Wrangler might be the reason that Jeep even exists, it was the Cherokee that had the biggest impact on the world's automotive trends, creating the template that would become the world's most popular category of car. Buying an XJ Cherokee in Australia these days will set you back as little as $4,000, and even mint condition examples should be less than 20 grand. Next up, even if you despise these things, there's no denying that they're iconic. It's the Toyota Hilux or pickup. Next time you turn on the news and see footage of some remote and hellish location being taken over by warlords or terrorists, take note of what vehicle they have their machine guns bolted to. Chances are it'll be a Toyota and probably a Hilux. If ever a vehicle was the poster child for ultimate reliability and an ability to handle whatever you throw at it, and also thanks to Top Gear, the Hilux must surely be it. But beyond its proven track record to outlast everything from various insurgent forces in third world countries to opinionated English car show hosts' highly entertaining shenanigans, the Hilux and the Toyota pickup in general is arguably the vehicle responsible for the rise in popularity of the ute, pickup or bakkie. The Hilux has been the highest selling car, or vehicle, in Australia every year since 2015, and this popularity has built year on year for over 5 decades, with the first official Hilux appearing back in 1968. Each new generation brought constant improvements, more power, improved suspension and brakes, increases in comfort, technology and safety, arguably spearheading the evolution of this category of vehicle, seen by many as setting the industry standard for all utes and pickups that followed. In North America in the mid-1990s, the Hilux, or the Toyota pickup as they knew it, evolved into the Tacoma to be more suitable to American buyers. And even the Tacoma in its second generation evolved yet again in its own right to be larger than the rest of the world's Hilux fleet. It still retained all of the Hilux's ability and dependability, and again is seen to be the vehicle in its class that sets the industry standard. The Hilux wasn't the first pickup or ute of its type. It was rarely, if ever, the first to introduce things like disc brakes or an extra cab or even serious off-road ability. But it's the Hilux that managed to seriously execute new features, technology and market trends in this category to a point where they became basically unbreakable. Buying a Hilux these days in Australia can be easy in terms of how many are available, but be prepared to pay a premium when compared to much of the competition. Pricing kicks off from as little as $3,000, but it will be a very tight example of a two-wheel drive, base spec, most likely with a very checkered history. And at the far, far other end of the pricing spectrum, some Hiluxes are asking over $120,000, which seems totally insane, but that's what the market dictates at the moment. We actually have a potential future classic tip in terms of the Hilux. Find a completely stock and low kilometre Hilux SR5 from the early 2000s. That's the one with the 3.4 litre 6. And mark our words, that thing's going to be a future classic. But it has to be totally standard, has to have a complete service history, have low kilometres, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, next up, something completely different. It's the W123 Mercedes. On January 29, 1976, Mercedes unveiled a new mid-size car known by its internal designation as the W123. The car's smart and sophisticated good looks and size seemed like a logical evolutionary step over the outgoing model. But little did the world know that Mercedes had created a car that would not only solidify Mercedes' position as the dominant luxury automaker in the world, or set up Europe as the premium automotive manufacturing hub, but it would also have an enormous impact on the evolution of modern vehicles globally. The term and associated image of German reliability was not commonly used until the W123 came along. And at a time when the gas crisis was still fresh on the minds of car buyers, the W123's diesel power plants introduced a generation of buyers to oil-burning engines. These diesel power plants were engineered to an incredibly high standard for the era, and while they didn't exactly set the world on fire in terms of acceleration, they have been known to top 1.5 million kilometres with little more than routine maintenance. This reputation made the W123 incredibly popular throughout the Middle East and Africa, and even today, you'll still find W123s racking up kilometres both on-road and off. On top of the bulletproof engines, the W123 in general was built to a point of over-engineering, and even in terms of what it offered for the time, the W123 set completely new standards. Even in base trim, it came equipped with power windows and locks, incredibly durable interiors and upholstery, and real wood trim. And by the end of their production run, W123s came equipped with side impact crash protection, crumple zones, anti-lock brakes, and even a driver's side airbag, all at a time when car safety was something of an afterthought. This all doesn't sound that impressive these days, but at that time, that was all seriously impressive stuff. Now guys, remember, nothing depreciates faster than a late model European luxury car. But now that W123s have found their way onto their 5th, 6th and even 7th owners, thanks to their incredible reliability and even better than average rust resistance, they just keep bloody going. Building a comfortable, reliable car is difficult enough. Building one that can do what it's built to do and hold up for over 40 years is nothing short of remarkable. These days, here in Australia, as little as $4,000 will get you into a W123 that, look, it will require some serious attention, but even mint condition examples should still comfortably sit under $40,000. Now, these days, we want our cars to have Apple CarPlay, autonomous emergency braking, and at least 14 cup holders. But for our next car, all it had to provide was an ability to be faster and better than a horse and a cart. It's the Citroen 2CV. While the Beetle may have been the people's car for the Germans, it was the 2CV that brought affordable motorised transport in the form of a car to the French. But it was something of a fashionably late start for the little Citroen, as while it was initially launched to a warm welcome from the French people in 1939, production had to be halted thanks to a certain Second World War kicking off. The 2CV project actually had to be hidden from the Nazis, with Citroen burying a few of the cars and destroying the rest to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Fast forward 10 years and production of the now improved 2CV finally began, using an air-cooled engine instead of water-cooled and constructed from materials which were far cheaper than the original aluminium. Being strong, light and simple with an engine just powerful enough to carry at least 4 people and 50 kilograms of additional weight at 30 miles an hour, the 2CV was actually required to fulfill other needs besides just being faster and better than a horse and cart. Rural customers at the time demanded that the car needed to be not only inexpensive and reliable, but it needed to be able to drive through a rough field with a bucket full of eggs without breaking them. The result was a car with a roof made from canvas, that water-cooled engine up front, and this very flexible suspension. The 2CV transformed France as a country. While cars were a common sight in big cities like Paris at the time, the French countryside, it still looked like it was from the Middle Ages, with the exception of a few motorcycles and bicycles. Not only did the 2CV put France's rural residents on wheels, being a critical component in rebuilding France after the war, it was produced for an amazing 42 years. In that time, the 2CV evolved and changed, and it was released in a host of different variations and submodels, but its simple and rugged foundation never altered. And many believe that the French automotive industry as a whole is built on the back of the humble little 2CV. Buying one in Australia these days can be a challenge as they are pretty rare, but most examples on sale should be loved and cared for. And pricing wise, you're going to be looking anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. Now guys, before we get to our final contender, and if you're enjoying this video and you're enjoying ReDriven in general, can you please hit those like, subscribe and bell buttons and share ReDriven as much as you can? We just want to keep making this content for you guys, and the only way we can do that is with your support. So hitting those buttons and sharing ReDriven means we can make more content for you. That'd be awesome. Okay, and finally for part 4, it's the Toyota Land Cruiser. Now, it's important to know that the Land Cruiser has had something of a complex history, and the Land Cruiser name itself has been bolted onto the back of everything from simple and utilitarian work trucks to comfort-orientated luxurious land yachts across multiple series over its 70-plus years of production. Initially, and like the Land Rover with the Defender, Toyota used the Willys Jeep as the inspiration when in the early 1950s, with the increase in demand for light utility military vehicles thanks to the Korean War, Toyota were asked to create a prototype of the then popular Jeep. The response to this challenge gave birth to the Toyota BJ, combining the B from the Toyota B-type engine with the J signifying the modified Jeep underpinnings. But the Toyota BJ name quickly became a bit of an issue. Not because of that, get your mind out of the gutter. See, it turned out that Willys had trademarked Jeep in 1954, so the J couldn't be used. Hence why Toyota then went with Land Cruiser. These early Land Cruisers found steady employment as military, police and fire vehicles, and Toyota eventually modified it into a civilian version in the form of the 20 Series Land Cruiser during Japan's post-war rehabilitation. But Toyota had been looking toward the possibility of exporting its domestic vehicles overseas, and they knew just how valuable the Land Cruiser was, so along with the Toyota Crown, they took the huge step forward in exporting Toyotas around the world. From then, the Land Cruiser evolved into the 40 Series, and to many, this is the icon within the range, being produced for nearly 25 years. But if you needed something that provided more practicality at this time, Toyota also offered the incredibly funky 4-door wagon version called the 50 Series. I would do very bad things to own one of these. From 1984, the Land Cruiser range began to split into either off-road or more luxury-orientated variants, although it's still not as simple as that. While the 50 Series evolved into the 60 Series, offering a more family-friendly design, a more comfortable interior, and additions to equipment and tech, while retaining its indestructible go-anywhere roots, the 70 Series was introduced as something of a direct replacement for the XJ40 as a bare-bones off-roading workhorse. Although, spawning from the 70 Series was the original J70 Land Cruiser Prado, which isn't exactly a bare-bones off-road workhorse, and it kicked off the entire Prado universe, which deserves its own video, but we actually touch on it in this video just up here. The 60 Series evolved into the 80 Series from 1990, then into the 100 Series, then the 200 Series, and now the 300 Series, with each iteration having its own loyal fans fighting the never-ending argument that their Land Cruiser series is better than the next or the previous generation. Even within the 70 Series, which, like guys, let's be honest, apart from a few notable updates, hasn't really changed all that much in its near 40-year lifespan, even it sparks heated arguments about which submodel of 70 is best. But no matter what year, series, model, variant or edition, the Land Cruiser has cemented Toyota's reputation for quality, durability and reliability. The Land Cruiser has defined itself by its ability to do just about anything, anywhere and at any time, and in doing so has helped Toyota sell more than 10 million of them worldwide. These days, nearly every Land Cruiser generation offers something to interest collectors, adventurers or even just the general public. To get behind the wheel, the pricing varies enormously. At the low end of the spectrum, around $7,000 will get you into a very rough 80 Series or an early 2000s Prado, but they'll have lived a hell of a life. And at the other end of the spectrum, and let's be honest, far from what's affordable for the majority of us, around about $200,000 will get you into a perfect condition, low kilometre and often copiously modified 70 or 200 Series Land Cruiser. But drop that price down to our $150,000 pricing cap, and look, you'll still get a copiously modified 70 or 200 series, but it might have a few more kilometers on it, and it might be in nearly perfect condition, but you know what? It's going to be just as good as something asking $50,000 more. Now guys, thank you so much for watching, but remember, we only have one more part to this series to go, so what do you think should make up part 5? Let us know in the comments. And remember, please hit those like, subscribe and bell icon buttons and share ReDriven as much as you can. That'd be awesome. See you next week. Anyway, look, it's the ends even for those, what am I doing with my hands? Like a pup. Iconic doesn't equate. Come on, dickhead. Seriously, execute. And even better than average rush resistance, rushing it, the whole thing. Not only did the 2CV put France's rural, I can't say rural, I just can't say it. And Toyota, what do you think should make a final part?